Hi, my name is James Shepard, and today I want to explain how to win the numbers game in prospecting. How to win the numbers game in prospecting. Now, before I get into this episode, I really want to take a second to promote what I believe is one of the best sales books I've ever read. Actually, I'm in the midst. I still haven't finished it yet, but it's actually a book called Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt, and I really like this one. This guy is a really good trainer. I've known him, not known him, but I've known of him for a long time, his different books. But this book, he really does a good job. I feel like he's kind of come a long way in his confidence level, and he's finally put something out that's just really like kind of slap you in the face, like, okay, you just got to go prospecting. So a lot of these videos that I'm shooting right now, some of the inspiration for them came from that book. However, this video pretty much just came from that book because there's a thing that I've noticed for a long time in sales, and I've talked about it in my videos, but this book really brought it home to me and made me really understand it. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about this today. So how to win the numbers game in sales. So the first thing you need to understand is that sales is a numbers game. And there's, again, a lot of people out there right now, and this book talks about this too. I just hate all these don't ever cold call again, and cold calling is dead, and all this crap. That is just ridiculous because the best salespeople are absolutely prospecting all the time. I have never met a successful salesperson that wasn't a maniacal prospector. Now, the funny thing is, you'll have salespeople that have been doing it for 10 or 20 years, and you're like, look at them, they don't really hardly ever prospect. They just get all these referrals. Well, yeah, you know why? Because they prospected for 10 years, every day, 5 days a week, So you got to prospect, and everything like that. But prospecting is also a numbers game. You have your contact and your closing rate. But there's another variable that I don't really talk about very much, which is your pipeline. The reason I don't talk about the pipeline very much is because in merchant services, the sales cycle is really short. I would say that the vast majority of merchant services sales are probably closed within 2 weeks of making the first contact. And I would be willing to bet that 30% of all merchant account sales are probably made on either the first or second visit. So there's a very short sales cycle time. And so you don't necessarily have a lot of prospects in the pipeline. However, having said that, there is a big problem that you have when you're prospecting if you're not careful. And it deals with some basic math. So let me give you this math. I want you to imagine for a second, you went out in the field and you walked into 20 businesses. So this would be like a normal day for me if I was prospecting full time. I would take about 1.5 hours to 2 hours, and I would go out and I would walk into 20 businesses, okay? If I walk into 20 businesses, I'm probably going to talk to 7 or 8 business owners. So I'm going to have these 7 or 8 contacts. Of those 7 or 8 contacts, 2 or 3 of them are going to become prospects, where I'm going to put them into my CRM system because there's some next action step. They're going to give me a statement. They gave me a statement. They need a proposal. Maybe I closed them on the spot, whatever it is, right? So I've added these, let's call it 4 people. I do that for a week. So I do that for 5 days. So I've got 20 people now after 5 days. I added 4 people a day to my CRM. I now have 20 people in my database system, okay? Now, let's imagine for a second that I close 3 of them, okay? So again, this is like a typical average week for a merchant services sales rep. You walked into 20 businesses a day for 5 days, so you walked into 100 businesses. Out of that, you got 20 people that showed some interest. Out of those 20, 3 people actually, you closed them and you got the sale. So 3 out of 20. Well, here's a big problem. You close 3 out of 20, which means you now have 17 prospects left in your pipeline, or so it would seem. But the truth is, you actually don't have anybody left in your prospecting pipeline. Now, how is that possible? You're thinking mathematically, what are you talking about, James? There's 20 people, I sold 3, that means I have 17 left. No, you don't have anybody left. You know why? Because we already know your close rate. You're able to close at about, in this case, what is that, 12.5% or something, 3 divided by 20. So you're able to close at 12.5 to 15%, whatever that number is, and that's it. And so what you're going to do if you're not careful is those other 17 people, you're going to spin your wheels with them for a long time. You have to put a shelf life on your prospecting. All right? So on your prospects, or they're not your prospecting. Don't ever put a shelf life on that, but a shelf life on your prospects. So if you know that you're closing 95% of your deals within 7 days of that first contact, that when it gets to day 8, you're done with all the prospects that you made, 8 days ago. And so what has to happen is every day you have to get rid of the prospects that you got 7 days ago if you know you have a 7-day shelf life. And the other thing you got to think about it is, if you want to think about more from a kind of philosophical level, is that if you're closing 3 out of, let's say, 7 people, right? Or I'm sorry, if you're closing 1 out of 7. So let's say your close rate is, I'm going to close 1 out of 7 people, right? Then obviously, if you close one person, that means there are 6 other people that you're not going to close, right? You just don't know which 6 they are. They're in your prospecting pipeline. So if I close 3 people and I know I'm closing 1 out of 7, then I know that 3 times 6 is 18. I know there's 18 prospects that I'm never going to close because my close rate is 1 out of 7. So the reason prospecting is so difficult is because you have this pipeline of people and you're like, man, what do I do with all these prospects and everything, because I just can't get them to say yes. I can't get them to say yes. And what will happen is you'll be tempted to just keep focusing on those 17, even though mathematically we know you already got the 3 people you were going to close out of those 17. You're done. You got to move on to the next one. So you have to constantly be replenishing your pipeline. So again, a couple ways you could look at that. I would really encourage you to think about this, because this is not one of these tips I can give you that's like really easy to implement. This one's a little more complicated because it's going to depend on what CRM system you're using, how you're tracking your prospecting and things like that. But somehow you need to have a way to tell you how many prospects are in my pipeline. You really need to make sure you have at least, I would say, 20 good prospects in your pipeline all the time. And again, every single day, you need to mark probably 3, 4, 5 of those prospects as old prospects because they were from more than 7 days ago and you haven't closed them yet, and get those off your radar screen. Now, again, that doesn't mean, if you have an extra hour and you want to follow up with those people, go for it. But the key thing is, in your mind, you have to understand, if I'm going to keep making 3 sales a week or 4 or 5 or whatever you're trying to do, you got to understand how many prospects do I need at any given point to make those sales. And then you have to replace the ones that become old, because as you're closing deals, that means there's a lot of deals you're not going to close. So be very careful about this. Make sure that you're keeping track. If I ask you right now, how many good prospects do you have right now that you're working on? You should know the answer to that. And those good prospects that you think are good prospects, they really shouldn't be from more than 7 days ago. If you're in merchant services, I mean, unless you're selling really big accounts or something, you really shouldn't have too many prospects that are older than 7 days ago. Definitely not more than 2 weeks. Definitely not more than 30 days. I mean, that would be the ultimate, like, really long-term thing. But if you're looking at 30 days, then you got to have probably like 100 prospects in your pipeline, and you got to be following up like crazy. So you got to be very careful about this and make sure you're keeping prospects in your pipeline and replacing the old ones. And the other thing I want to get you in this video is go buy Fanatical Prospecting. I'm listening to it on Audible right now. I'm sure they have it on Amazon. Maybe we'll throw a video or a link below the video or something. But make sure you go buy that book. I don't know how expensive it is. I just got it on my Audible subscription, but it's definitely however much it costs, it's definitely worth it, because it's really going to motivate you to get some good prospecting done. So my name is James Shepard. Thanks for watching and listening.